My name is Trey Robinson. I am the BC Bike Ambassador Coordinator with WABA. I'm joined with Matt on Jaffe with Jaffe Cycling. And today we will be talking about cycling maintenance for the colder months.
All right, well, everyone for joining in today, definitely want to say thank you. We really appreciate the support. We really appreciate the opportunity to really connect with you right now and actually talk about something that we all love to do, right? Which is cycling, biking in the winter months, biking throughout the year round. What I wanted to first do was introduce myself. So my name is Matt Jaffe. I'm the founder and owner of Jaffe Cycling. The number one question that I get as far as cycling in the winter months is, Matt, what should we be wearing? It's really, really cold out there and we have no idea what to wear. Will a hoodie cut it? Will my regular fleece cut it? I don't want to wear these big coats because it feels just way too heavy on the bike. So a lot of times we get a ton of questions, but it's usually revolving around clothing. So if you've been on YouTube and if you listen to a number of other cyclists out there, everybody tells you want to have layers. Layers is the most important thing that we can really stress to all of our riders. And by layers, we mean we want to have an undershirt. So typically a long sleeve thermal. It doesn't necessarily have to be the heavy thermal. It really depends. So I always say it's really a preference base. If you are an individual who gets cold very quickly, you may want to wear one of your thicker, more 100% cotton thermals. If you're an individual who already sweats very easily, then you may want to wear one of your lightweight long sleeves underneath. But you always want to have that undershirt because that's going to be really, really important to keep you warm. The next thing, I have a ton of stuff with me, but we have these gloves here. So wool gloves during the winter months are going to be really, really important. And I know you may think that these don't have the best grip as far as your handlebars and things like that, but the thickness in these type of gloves really work well as far as preventing you from getting cold in your fingers. And you can always take hand warmers. These trusty hand warmers go a long, long way. They come in 2 in a pack, and they're only about $1.50. So it's not very expensive, but you just take 1 pack and you put them in each glove. And this will actually go a very long way. They keep you warm for up to about 10 hours. So I highly encourage getting a pack of hand warmers. Excuse me. And then toe warmers. So I don't know if you guys can all see those, but you definitely want to make sure you get those really thick wool socks, and you can put the toe warmers in there as well. Just continuing with talking about the clothing, something that you really want to invest in as well is your face. A lot of us, we wake up in the morning and we think, we got these beautiful faces. We don't want them to get frostbites. We don't want them to get too cold. So one thing that you want to invest in are going to be some face coverings. So these are thermal fleece face coverings. They're really good because the beauty of them is they actually cover your mouth and your nose. So not only are you keeping warm throughout your face, but we're also adhering to some of the COVID mask wearings throughout the trails and while you're outside as well. So it's really one of those things that really helps tackle 2 things at one time. Now, bike prep. Now, this part right here is really important. So there's a ton of things that you want to make sure that you're doing to adhere to the bicycle preparation for the winter months. I got my trusty Cannondale behind me. And the number one thing that I did first was I took a look at my tires. So you definitely want to go out, take a look at your tires and make sure, do I have tread on my tires? As it starts to get cold, you'll notice that the roads get really, really slippery. And that's because of all the ice. So the frosting comes on in the morning, your 6, 7 a.m. riders, even the later riders in the 8, 9 a.m. You'll notice a ton of icing on the floor. So you want to make sure that we have a lot of tread so that you still get that good traction. One of the big recommendations during this time frame are studded tires. Studded is S-T-U-D-D-E-D, tires. So now these tires are a little bit different. They're going to be a bit more thicker. So for I know my road bike riders, you may not want these tires if you want to still kind of go fast. But for my hybrid riders, as well as my mountain bike riders, you really want to look into some of the studded tires as they provide maximum traction. So it actually gives you a better feel as far as grip on the road while you're out riding. I'm not really sure the pricing. It's really going to depend on the brand that you get, but I'm sure you can find them online at a number of the other Bicycle Direct locations or online sites for you. The next thing that you want to make sure is you want to look at your air. So in thinking about our air, normally in the summertime, we're pumping our air somewhere between, if you are a hybrid rider and your tire pressure is usually somewhere between 60 and 80 PSI. You typically want to ride somewhere between 75 and 80 PSI. In the wintertime, in the colder months, it's actually different, right? So what we want to do is we actually want to decrease that pressure now, and we want to take it down anywhere from 10 to 15 PSI level. So you want to keep it closer on the lower end. And again, this is actually to help you get more of that traction. Ultimately, we want to avoid basically sliding on the road while you guys are out cycling. So for my bike, I typically ride on 100 PSI in the warmer and the summer months. Now I'm down to about 80, 85 PSI. Just depends on the day. Some days are a little bit better than others. So with that, you just got to be mindful. It's definitely a feel thing. So as you continue to go out and ride, you'll get a better sense or a better feeling of exactly where you'd like your pressure levels to be. I did want to mention one more thing as far as going out to ride. In the summer months, we normally have our water bottles, and they're usually going to be more of a plastic type of material and things like that. I highly, highly, highly recommend getting a double insulated canteen. So now these are really, really good. See, I just got mine. I'm super excited about this one. I got to take the tape off. So this is actually a thermal flask. And the reason why we recommend this is in the summertime, this actually keeps all of your beverages really, really cold. But in the wintertime, it keeps your beverages warm. So for all of my coffee lovers, my tea lovers, those individuals who like to take their broth on the go, even your hot cocoa. It is that time of year, guys. So if you're drinking your hot cocoa, make sure to get you a flask and put it in there. This keeps it a lot warmer, a lot more hot during the duration of your ride. So I highly recommend you getting a double insulated thermal flask. And that was another thing I wanted to mention to you guys. Your saddlebags are super, super important right now. I know in the summertime, I noticed quite a people riding around and they didn't have a saddlebag. Mine's pretty dirty, but they didn't have a saddlebag with them. If you puncture a tire, if you get a flat, if you pop a chain, anything that could possibly go wrong on your bike rides, now is the time to not be without your saddlebag. You want to make sure you have this at all times. Even if you don't know how to change a flat, it's important that you at least have the materials and the tools needed to fix a flat in case another rider is on the road and they can actually stop and assist you. Just the other day, we actually had to stop. I was on a one-on-one session and we didn't have the proper pump, but I'm glad that I had that in my saddlebag. So just having the necessary tools, and other riders can actually assist you while you guys are out on the trails. And that brings us to trails, riding the trails during the winter months. So if you are familiar with Joffé cycling, then you know that our favorite hashtag is always "see you on the trails," because the District of Columbia, believe it or not, or the DMV area, we have some of the best, most historic trails in the entire country. I mean, between the W&OD Trail, the Mount Vernon Trail, you've got the Haynes Point Loop. It's so many different trails that are accessible to our riders. So it's really, really important that this time of year, we're the most vigilant and aware while we're on the trails. Now, I know when we ride, we're going so fast, typically, we don't see all the road signs. So these are the times, especially for my Anacostia Trail River riders, these are the times where we need to make sure we're being mindful of those signs that say bridges get icy when cold. So if you know you're getting ready to go over a bridge, you want to make sure that we are tapping our brakes. We don't want to squeeze, because squeezing the brakes can cause for less resistance, and ultimately your wheels can lock up and you'll slide over the ice. So this is that time of year where you want to start tapping the brakes a little bit, but being mindful of traveling over some of those icy bridges. The other road sign that's really popular are going to be when you're coming down a slope. So there are slopes, some of those hills, climbs for those of us who like to do, get our power up. But for those slopes that are going downhill, awesome opportunity to catch some really good wind, right? But you have to be careful, because now we can't necessarily see all of the black ice. And this is black ice shining moment. This is when it really likes to come out and not necessarily show itself, because you can't always see it. But this is when it's definitely around. So being mindful and watching out for all of those road signs, you definitely want to be mindful of the ones that tell you about what's ahead as far as on the trails. There's a number, WABA has a really awesome program for Bike to Work. And I love seeing all of my commuter riders still trucking into work, still biking into work. It looks awesome. You guys are doing a fantastic job. But the one thing that we want to be mindful of this time for all my commuter riders are our hand signals. So as a cyclist, it's really important when you got your right hand up, letting the riders know behind you, hey, I'm going right. So pointing to the right hand side, same with your left hand. As much as I talk about our tires on the bicycles being able to lose traction or lose grip and start to slide, the same things happen with cars. So you want to make sure that you're letting all of the other drivers know which direction you're going. You don't want to be switching lanes without making the proper hand signals. So I think that's going to prove very, very well for all of my winter riders. So for the first hand signal, I like to always point. I like to double point whenever I'm going. So this is me going right. This is my right hand. I'm not sure what side it looks like for you guys, but pointing out. And then I like to hold it as well. So if I'm going right, I like to hold it until I fully make that turn. This is my right hand, so I'm making a right turn. For my left hand, we're going this way. So we're making a left hand turn. And again, I like to make sure that it's visible to the drivers as well as the other riders behind me. When I'm coming to a slow, when I'm slowing down and there's riders behind me, there's two ways that I like to do it. I like to put my hand straight up, and this way they just let them know that, and then I'll yell out slowing. For the riders who are typically drafting off of me, if we're pretty close, I like to put it a little bit lower down, and then I just pat back this way. So this is the way that I would do if I'm slowing. One sign or a sign that kind of gets glossed over a little bit as far as hand signals is I like to, as I'm riding my bike, if I'm actually going over a pothole, or if I see a pothole or any obstruction in the road, I like to just wave around that pothole. So as I'm coming up, I'll see a pothole or a sewer, I'll ride over and say sewer or bump, pothole. And I let the riders know that this is coming up. So I want the rider behind me to understand I'm going to move around it, and I'm really hoping that they do the same. It's really a team mentality that you have to have when you guys are riding. We want to make sure that you're not keeping just yourself safe, but you're also looking out for the rider both behind you as well as the ones to your left and right. So making sure that we use all of these hand signals definitely help as far as keeping everyone safe and vigilant. This is also a very, very pivotal time as far as riding in the winter months. Some people, because it's too cold, they're saying, I'm not getting back out there until it gets warm outside. And with that being said, some of us still want to cycle, or at least still want to get the cardio or the exercise in. So a lot of people ask, what do I do if I don't want to ride outside anymore, but I want to continue riding my bike? Unfortunately, the gyms are not the best place to be right now, or at least not the most popular places to be right now, I'll say, simply because of the virus, because of the pandemic. You want to decrease the amount of exposure that we have to those type of things. So a lot of people have been asking me, Matt, what is it that I can do to still stay active, still stay in shape, but not be outside in the cold months? And this is where I think bike trainers play a huge, huge role in the cycling community right now. The bike trainers are awesome, depending on the brand and depending on how much you want to spend on it. People ask me all the time, what's a good amount to spend on a bike trainer? And honestly, it's however much you're willing to spend. I think you'll make it work. But I found the sweet spot is typically about between the $200 range and $500 range. You can get a decent bike trainer that won't necessarily break the bank, but has all the bells and whistles, or at least enough features that'll still allow you to connect to some of your favorite apps. And I'll go into that in a second. So one thing is understanding that there are different types of bike trainers. I actually did a video on my Instagram about the different types of bike trainers. And what I'd like to just point out is just the different types right now. But if you get a chance, check the video out. Let me know what you think as far as the actual statistics and some of the in-depth thoughts on what each bike trainer functionally is capable of. So the first trainer are going to be the magnetic trainers. The magnetic bike trainers are one of the more common bike trainers that a lot of individuals purchase. And those are going to be because they are a little bit more on the inexpensive side. The magnetic bike trainers, some people say they're a little bit loud, but again, that's going to depend on your price preference as well as the brand. The next one that I'm actually a little more familiar with are going to be the fluid bike trainers. So I actually like the fluid bike trainers. They're more of kind of a sweet spot for me. I feel like I'm still getting that road-like feel. And the noise for me is bearable. I actually purchased a Saris Fluid Squared bike trainer. Again, that one was $350 for the bike trainer. So far, I haven't had any issues. So we'll see. I'll let you know by the end of the winter months how it really panned out, right? The next bike trainer are the rollers. The rollers have been around for a really long time. And the only thing I think a lot of people that scares them is the fact that they just feel like they're going to fall. I think the rollers are really good in terms of practicing on your balance. They really force you to have a very good balance. So I'd be more than happy for someone who's used them to give their insight on the rollers trainers as well. And the more popular ones that are a little more recent are going to be your direct drive trainers. These are the trainers, the smart trainers, right? So these are the bike trainers that actually you remove your rear wheel and you hook this up to the device, and these automatically connect to a lot of those apps. So some of the apps that a lot of people are using with their bike trainers are going to be Zwift is one of the more popular ones that a lot of people are using now. Ruby is another. Full Gas, and that's FULGAZ is another one. All of these apps, they do have a subscription fee. So, but for about $15 or less, they really allow you to get some really cool features. So if you're familiar with playing online video games with your buddies or just playing online video games in general, think of the smart app compatibility similar to that feature or similar to that function. You can connect with people all across the world and actually compete in races, compete in rides, or just simply train using these apps. So it's really a good opportunity for my riders who are, very avid about not riding in the winter months. I definitely suggest investing in a bike trainer. That's really something that I try to do at least 2 to 3 times a week in the morning. And another reason why I love the bike trainers are because it really forces you to focus on your power, focus on your speed, as well as your cadence. If you are familiar with a lot of the trails, you get opportunities. There's downtime. There's downhills, so you don't have to necessarily pedal, so you can coast. For all of my riders who are looking to get stronger for next season, a bike trainer will definitely help you do that because there's no breaks. You are constantly pedaling. So I think that's a really good feature, a really good function that the bike trainers add to the whole cycling element. So the very first thing you want to do is you want to inspect those brake pads as well. I didn't get to the whole ABC earlier, but I know Waba has mentioned to you guys the ABC checklist, and the B are the brake pads. So that's also in your pre-ride checks that you definitely want to do. If you notice there's a significant amount of wear and tear on your brake pads, now is the time to start changing all of those. Your tires, your brake pads, as well as your handlebars. Those are, and also your bike chain is something you want to really start to take a good look at and make sure that the wear on them from the summer months didn't do too much damage. As far as the tune-up, the average answer is usually going to be twice a year that you want to do a tune-up. My recommendation is it's really going to vary based on how often you ride. So for my riders who are on the bike 3 to 4 times a week, you really want to be changing. You really want to have a tune-up or someone to look at your bike, I would say seasonally. So that's actually 4 times a year. So once every season, I would have someone to take a look at my bike, make sure that the wheel axle is loose, because your bike, the wear and tear happens the same way as it does on a car. So every 100,000 miles, you need to change something on the vehicle. You want to get your spark plugs looked at. It's the same way on a bike. Every 250 to every 500 miles, you want to make sure that do I need to change my wheels? Do I need to change my tires, brake pads, etc. From a drivetrain clean perspective, I won't lie to you guys, I'm pretty obsessed. The moment I started cleaning my drivetrain, I do it actually once a month. And you really want to do that a little more frequently depending on how often you ride. So if you're riding to work, for instance, every single day, I would wash my drivetrain probably twice a month. So bi-weekly, if you will. And the reason that they say that is we get a lot of dirt and we get a lot of debris that comes up in our bike chain. It comes up in between the wheel jockeys. And if you don't know what the wheel jockey is just take a look at your rear derailleur. It's the smaller 2 wheels in between that top gear as far as the frame and as well as the bottom chain. So what really helps your chain to switch gears properly. There's a lot of buildup that we get in between those your jockey wheels. So cleaning those out is going to be really important frequently. I read that you're also supposed to have, they would love for you to get your bike washed every single day that you ride. After every single ride, you should wash your bike. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Most of us do not wash our bikes every time we ride in the warmer months. So I highly doubt we'll do it in the winter. But my recommendation is every 3 to 4 rides, I would at least just wipe my bike down. But every ride, I do wipe my chain off. The bike chain is one of the more important things that you want to make sure is clean and free from a lot of that dirt and all that buildup. So this is the Finish Line dry lubricant. So this is what I use for my chain. The benefit of this is really going to be a much quieter ride. So what this does is it allows your chain to move very smoothly over your top and bottom chain rings or your high and low gears, as well as shift really nicely through all of your cogs in the rear. This is what I use as far as keeping that chain lubricated. And then there's a degreaser that I use. So Finish Line also provides, it comes in the black bottle. It's actually the degreaser that I use to actually wash. So it's a solvent-based solution that I use to wash out my cassette, my sprockets, or my cogs, depends on what your terminology that you like to use. I also floss my gears too. So that's something that I highly recommend during this time. Sometimes the brush doesn't always get there, but simply grabbing a shoelace can be used to floss, but there are a specific type of yarn, like a bicycle yarn, that people use to actually floss in between their cassette rings. So lubricate more in the winter months. That's going to be significantly important. The comparison that I typically give, or the analogy, if you will, that I typically give is if you've ever ridden, if you ever flown on a plane during the winter months, you'll notice that they're typically, before every single flight, they're defrosting the plane. So they're spraying each plane down to make sure that as you get up in the wind and you get up to those higher altitudes, that the plane will actually withstand a lot more of those wind chill, withstand a lot more of that colder temperature. The same principle applies to your bicycle. You want to make sure before every single ride that I lubricate, I made sure that I was lubricating my drivetrain system. So that's really going to be advantageous as it gets colder throughout the ride, because you just never know some days how long you're actually going to be on the bike. So making sure that you lubricate before every single ride is going to be important. And then we dry it off when we come back in to get a lot of that buildup and that dirt and debris off. As far as the dry versus wet, the preference is typically going to be the dry lubrication. As far as a big comparison, I really don't have a big comparison with that one. Just more of a recommendation, right? So once you go through a lot of the maintenance course, the bicycle road maintenance course and things like that, the recommendation is typically going to be a dry lube versus your wet. Top 3 winter maintenance tip. Number 1, make sure you have layers. Layers before you go outside so that you yourself can stay warm. That's the biggest thing, making sure that it's compact and not overwhelming. So not your big puffy coats, but you want to make sure you have a number of thermals and layers underneath kind of your cycling jacket. The number 2, the biggest one, your tires. Please, please, please inspect your tires. Having the proper amount of tread on your tires will save you from some of the most gruesome spills that happen during the winter months. That's really, really important. And then the third one is being vigilant of your road signs, both your road signs on the trails as well as your road signs on the streets for all of my commuter riders. So if you're going to be out there still riding in the winter months, which I do encourage you to continue to do, just be mindful of those icy bridges on a lot of the trails. Be mindful of those slopes, that downhill movement, and you definitely want to be mindful of lanes on the streets that are merging, red lights. So you want to adhere to all of the roadside, all the traffic signals and signs that a typical car would have to adhere to as well.
Thank you, Matt. We really appreciate all your thoughts on cycling maintenance and quick tips and hacks and things that I may not even known after riding for a while. So again, thank you, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trey, for having me on the show today. And Waba, thank you so much for the platform. I really, really appreciate connecting with both you guys as well as all of your riders. All right. As always, see you guys on the trails. Thanks, man.